think. We've got apologies.
So we have apologies this evening from Councillors Bywater, McAdam and Welton.
Thank you. So we'll go to the minutes. We're approving the minutes of the last meeting from the 1st of February. Is everyone happy with those minutes? Thank you. So moving on to members' interest. Has anyone got any interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest to declare? Great, then we'll move on to our working programme, item number 3. Has everyone had a look at it? Has anyone got comments to make about our working programme or any future ones?
And the notice of key decisions is there as well.
Yes, and any key decisions. Has anyone got any comments on that? Thank you. So moving on to item number 4, the public electric vehicle charging strategy. We're going to have a presentation. We've had a look at this already, but we're going to have a presentation from George and Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share a few points before George tells you a bit more about the work we've completed. The first is actually the importance of the title of the policy that we've created. So public electric vehicle charging. This is important because it tells us what's in scope and out of scope of the work we're talking about. So electric vehicle charging points that are open to the public to use, that the public can access. And that also means that this isn't electric vehicle charging for our own fleet either. So this is about how can we best help the public charge their electric cars. The second thing I would point out to you is this is probably the first item that we brought to you in the last few years, which is co-produced. So the Climate Working Group helped look through some of the information that was discovered and help decide what was going to be in this proposed strategy. And so you'll see it in the forward, there's some words there from Councillor Kerr as well, kind of to show that we wrote this together. The next important thing I would bring your attention to is on page 4 of the actual policy. And this is about where does this policy fit in what's happening all across Cambridgeshire. So you may well hear in the news that the County Council is working on a charging strategy, the Combined Authority is working on a charging strategy. So this outlines why we need to do this. And that's because this document focuses specifically on defining the role that Huntingdonshire District Council will play in supporting or funding public charging provision within our district. So this is about our council and what we will do and what our priorities will be. And then the final thing I'd bring your attention to is later in the actual policy, where we list out our roles and objectives. This is section 8, page 11 of the policy. And just like within the climate policy, there are things that we have decided we will enable, things that we will influence, and then things that we will do. And it's really the do section I would ask that you consider most thoroughly. And the do section is what's going to help us in the future. Because as you have probably seen from the way that public bodies are funded, the central government tends to identify a need they see in the public, a need that needs to be addressed, set aside a pot of money, and then ask councils to bid for it, literally to compete for it, to apply for a certain amount, and then bring it into their council and use it to provide services. And we anticipate that's what's going to happen with electric vehicle charging. So the section that's what the council will do is, should funding like that become available, what will our priorities be with it? So if it should arrive in our council, we will look to obtain and utilize it and prioritize support for rural off-street provision in proximity to local amenities. So, and that's because of everything else that's in the report. All the analysis we did identified that's the niche that we think is not going to be supportive either through the market or through other government funding programs. So having those words there not just gives us some direction if we were to have funding, but it will also help us get funding. Because when we apply for it, we have a clear direction of what we would use that funding for. So those are the main highlights of the report, but I'm going to let George introduce it a little bit, and then please feel free to ask us questions.
Good evening, councillors. So tonight we brought forward a paper relating to electric vehicle charging. Appended to the report is a copy of the proposed electric vehicle charging strategy, but more importantly is the public electric vehicle charging strategy, which we've recommended that Cabinet adopt. The aim of the strategy is to identify the Council's role in public EV charging, to provide a rationale and approach for how we consider future public charge points and development as an authority, and to enhance our ability to unlock future funding. During the development of the strategy by the working group, we have reviewed local data and been informed by the findings of our public consultation. So tonight we're inviting comments from the panel on the recommendation to endorse this strategy. I look forward to your comments and any questions you may have.
Thank you, George. Has anyone got any comments or questions for George or Councillor Davenport-Ray? I mean, I feel like I know this so well, having worked with you. It's kind of like I can't even think of any questions apart from I just think it's brilliant. You've written it really well, and I think it's going to be very, very helpful, particularly for the parishes, the outlying parishes. Any other comments before we move on? Questions? Councillor Davenport-Ray.
I'm going to be unorthodox and ask George a question. George, can you tell us more about the first interactions we've started to have with parish councils and local groups about installing EV in rural locations?
Absolutely. So part of the information we've captured within the report and within the actual strategy itself is looking at how we can support, and our role itself as HDC, to support parish councils. So there's legislation restricting what parish councils can and can't do, and a lot of that legislation would mean that parishes aren't actually able to progress their own EV charging. We did a bit of pilot work as part of the strategy development, which is where we learned this information from. And as part of our role, we will look as HDC to support these parishes. So if parishes want to do it, we can act as that company, that third party, however you want to see it, that helps these parishes access EV charging on their land, where importantly, it may not actually be of interest to a independent manufacturer or company as an investor.
Thank you. I've looked at the locations and that we're considering at the moment. They're really good. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. I echo your comments. It was something, I was quite open, this wouldn't have been my priority, but I think it was something that was really collaborative. It was something that we were able as backbenchers to have a real input in. And I like Councillor Davenport-Ray's reassurance about the rural villages, and this is where the district council can really play a part in enabling EV provision that for those residents that have EV cars and have a demand but don't have a supply to support it. Just one comment. I think there's a slight change from the report when I last saw it on the other please specify on barriers to ownership. I think there was a comment about there was a question mark over ethics of the production of EV charges. I think that was what the other was specified, but it's not specified in this report on page 48 of the document, page 3 of 5 of the actual report.
I didn't spot that. Well spotted, Councillor Alban.
Could we have a chat after and we can point out exactly where that is, and then we can think about what the recommendation to Cabinet will be if we feel it needs to change?
Councillor Alban. Oh.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. I don't think the recommendation will change. It was just noting that was one of the concerns that was raised. I think the document in itself doesn't need to change, nor the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. looking at I've lost my page, but the page is section 9, charge plow installation, saying that we would aim for a minimum standard of 7 kilowatts unless limited by site, which, if my understanding is, that's about the standard in the industry. Yeah. Do we know how common constraints are that could limit that being the minimum standard? And if so, how would we overcome that on our own site? And how could we support parishes to overcome that?
Thank you, Councillor. So the minimum standard, you can get a lower specification, which is down to 3.5. 7 is deemed the normal lowest standard, charging a car within a reasonable time frame from 0 to 80% or up to 100%. What we do is we would look at the actual provisions of the site. So again, a lot of our rural sites may have limited incoming power supplies, where, for example, it could be a limited supply of 100 amp supply, 60 amp supplies. And if you say that we're going to aim for higher, then we can restrict being able to do anything. And again, it will be on a case-by-case basis. It may be that you can increase the incoming site supply and aim for a better achievement of charging. However, we'll have to look at the cost on an individual basis, dependent on where those sites are located.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. Do we know what the delay is currently for connecting to the grid? Because I know, obviously, the BP roundabout, BP garage at the Huntingdon roundabout has had a sign up for ages. So I was just wondering if you know.
We haven't got a formal timescale. From experience, when we previously applied to UKPN, it's been 3 to 4 months in order for that application to go in, for a specification to come back to us. It does depend on other works that they've got and also the consideration for what the grid demand is in that area as well. But there is a lead time that, yeah, unfortunately, our experience is 3 to 4 months.
Any other comments or questions? There we go. Moving on to item 5, independent review of the long-term operating model for One Leisure. We have Councillor Taylor and Greg. Would you like to start, Councillor Taylor?
Is that okay? Yep. Okay. I'll just give you, it's a little bit of the insight into the report, but following the appointment of the interim head of leisure in May 2022, one of the 3 remits he was appointed for was to propose and implement a long-term operating model review for One Leisure. Alongside those sit 2 others, which is a review for One Leisure's commercial sustainability and operation. And the last one is to implement a medium-term financial and operational plan. But this report focuses on an independent review who has done it. Peter has done it. So I'll just introduce Peter. Peter is our independent reviewer, and this is a very robust review that you hopefully have read. It was very long. The review focuses on its in-house leisure function and considers the initial transformation work that has been undertaken recently since 2022, when Greg was appointed interim head of leisure. This will look at the appropriate future operating model for One Leisure. I do believe that this review is vital for the understanding of the different operating models that could be pursued. It's looking at the short, medium and long-term scoping. The independent review is thorough. No stone has been left unturned, and this gives me confidence that the continuation of One Leisure transformed in-house operating model is the correct recommendation. And I would, if you are happy to take over, Peter. Hang on.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Peter Appleton from First Point Management and Consultancy. We have the presentation, which we'll go through with you now, if you can. I won't read everything out on the board because I'm sure you can manage that. I'll just try and add additional information to it. So the third action on the board really is where we came in. This is what we were commissioned to undertake, that independent review, but with a weather eye on the other two recommendations, the other two points of the remit up there, 1 and 2. That was always at the back of the process here of our thinking whilst undertaking this review. So the core focus was really looking at the optimum service delivery model in the short, medium to long term as well. But alongside that, also to review the built facility and play and pitch strategy that was adopted by the council in June last year, and to look at how that could be taken forward. In terms of the short-term operating models, you know, a span of 2 to 3 years was part of the brief which we were looking at, and that really looked at the short-term delivery options, but the consideration of the disruption to the leisure market due to the COVID-19 pandemic, what recovery looked like in the market and in the business, and how that may influence delivery options for the council going forward. And I think what we've seen in a period of time, that market recovery is ongoing, it is improving, it hasn't quite got to the position of being rebalanced into a pre-COVID environment thus far. And when we talk about that, that's really about the market tension. If you went to a procurement exercise, you know, operators are a bit more cautious, given most of them have all been in difficulties through COVID, whether that be in-house, external, or individual charitable trusts. They've all been in that position. And certainly what we saw in the early stages of the recovery from COVID was that there was a degree of reluctance to invest in a major procurement exercise, which does absorb a lot of resources for local authorities when the outcome was uncertain and it may not actually improve the current position at all. Here's the core bit, the simplified options appraisal. So the council set the criteria for the options appraisal that run horizontally along the top of the page there. And these were considered against the 4 core delivery options of in-house, a local authority trading company, a charitable trust, and the open market solution. In this, we assessed each of those options against there. In terms of the matrix there, green provides you with the most advantageous position for the council, red the least advantageous, and the amber is the point in the middle. It's relatively self-explanatory there in terms of where we got to. I would just highlight, whilst we do recommend that the council take forward a transformed in-house, the 2 red sections there are not necessarily a negative. They just don't change the current position because they're the liabilities you currently carry, so they don't actually change anything particularly. And I think one of the reasons why we came to the position of believing that the transformed in-house model was the best solution for the council in the immediate short term was, given the market conditions and the fact you've actually started a journey of transformation already. You've got a head of service who's actually got a contract extension to carry on that journey. And one of the things that would be beneficial probably for the council is to squeeze maximum value out of the in-house service before you take any other decisions in the future. So you're actually achieving the maximum value out of this before you went to the market, if you do indeed go to the market. And I think probably what is worth saying, as the market does move to full recovery in the medium to longer term, delivery options should be assessed again. You should always be sort of horizon scanning to see what's changing in the market. And that would be supported by sort of an early market engagement exercise when you're actually talking to potential providers to see where they're at and what position they may well be in a procurement situation. We also looked at the built facility play and pitch strategies, which again, no great surprise, it identified a shortfall in provision. It's not unique to Huntingdon. Most places where they do that, they find there's actually, there is a shortfall in provision, so it's no great surprise. One of the things that probably needs to be taken on is a financial appraisal, because that would help inform what the investment needs are over time, and also help inform where you would look for external funding bids, and indeed other organisations look for funding bids also. I think probably out of the key takeaway for this is not to panic, because it's these strategies span over 2 decades. They're not something you need to rush into doing right now. And also the council, whilst it has a legitimate leadership role across the district, it's not the sole owner or the sole funder of these strategies. Other organisations and clubs can actually be doing some of this work on their own. The last point on the screen there, where we looked at the key considerations. So those key issues really, as it really looked at why we would look to how the estate could be developed in consideration of the operating model, the capital investment to refurbish, etc., and also how that would actually help One Leisure to be sustainable. So what we did, we looked at the strategies and came up with a suggested investment program over the short, medium and longer term. So these are there's plenty more, but these are the ones that we looked at when we looked at these strategies and seeing which across the One Leisure estate, which we believe could be progressed in a relatively logical order. The flow of many of these items would be feasibility, outline business case, moving on to a full business case if need be, secured funding, and then delivery. Because when we start to look at each one of these, we don't actually know what is feasible, so you've really got to do that feasibility work to begin with. And it doesn't just need to be a consideration of the obvious, and these are all the things that came out of these strategies. If you look at the bottom of the presentation there, the commercial opportunities, it's other things that help sustain One Leisure. So here's a very pretty slide, and this is just as an idea. It's not necessarily a solution, it might not work, but thinking about commercial outcomes that can help support the service and potentially generate surpluses for it. So just as an example, looking at St Ives Outdoors, if you looked at the cafe and bar, which is in a pretty desperate state at the moment, it's pretty grim, but with investment into that to make it a destination, which could be supported by other facilities and attractions, and just ideas, they're not necessarily grounded in any reality at the moment, but you've got a big space there, high ropes course, golf driving range, laser tag, that interactive circuit training in the indoor big barn that's up there. These are things that could actually help support and generate some surpluses. And again, that's the kind of feasibility work which you would need to undertake on them. But it's just thoughts and ideas. It doesn't need to be glued into exactly what's in those strategies, because they're relevant, totally relevant, and they're robust. But it's actually about the creative thinking where you can do things differently. And here, in a relatively kind of short order, is just a timeline that looks indicative timeline, really. Looks like the starting line, really, is where you're at for the transformed in-house. You've started that journey. And as I said earlier, it's about squeezing the value from the service to provide the best commercial outcome in the medium and longer term, regardless of the future delivery models. And I think if there was a message to begin with, it would be to sort of get that feasibility work underway and starting with the decarbonisation of the estate. And that follows on from the great start that's been made at Ramsey and accessing government funding while it's still on the table. And in here, this is across the medium and longer term. I think one of the important things is the success of the transformed in-house is about the investment into that transformation journey. And that's the investment in the process of transformation, but also the investment in facilities. Because if you don't invest in those, you'll only stand still and you'll only go backwards eventually. And I think it is important, the key message here is to horizon scan and test supplier appetite through that early market engagement at an appropriate time. And I think the key thing here is, if you're seeing the pivot towards health, is cement productive relationships with health and specifically the ICB, where it can actually secure some funding that supports that pivot towards health, and leisure can be at the centre of all of that. So kind of summary of the kind of key recommendations. There's a lot more in the full report, but this is just a summary, is to resource the transformed in-house for future success. So establish the transformation design principles and outcomes framework for the service. Review and manage the delivery of the proposed 3-year action plan, which I'm sure will probably be coming back to this committee. Engage with the health sector and the wider health and wellbeing partners. As I said, begin that commission of the decarbonisation feasibility studies at other sites and commence the feasibility work for potential capital investment schemes across the estate. So that leads us to the chalkboard. Any questions for myself? And I'm sure Greg and Ollie can also chip in as well if need be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for a good presentation. It's not a question as such, really. I think you've only got to look at the Saltry Leisure facilities as an example of where outsourcing these facilities to a private operator can fail its residents. So personally, I'm wholeheartedly in support of the transformed in-house model. I think it's the best alternative on the table. Not a question.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. This may not be a question for any of you guys because it's about the VAT change of treatment. I just wondered if we've actually investigated to see if we can reclaim any VAT or not.
Yes, I can confirm that the Section 151 officer and the finance team have researched it and have looked into it, and that's currently underway at the moment in terms of our finance portfolio.
Councillor.
Thank you. The report highlights a transformed in-house model, which I think keeping it in-house is, as Councillor Shaw said, is absolutely the correct thing. But with the word transformed and a set of transformation principles, what would users expect to see change over time or as part of those principles?
What we've seen elsewhere is where you've looked at a transformed in-house is to be quite commercial, but be very aware of local circumstance, local partnerships, and be really on the front foot. So you're taking the best out of the commercial sector, the best out of the public sector, driving through change in an organisation that makes it sustainable, so it doesn't become a burden on the council.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I think it's just kind of making it clear, and I completely agree with everything you said, that one leisure is not going anywhere. Kind of we're keeping it our own kind of, it's more of an improvement than, because the word transformation can seem quite scary when you see that, but no, all makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say, firstly, how thorough the report is. It actually was quite insightful. And also just to echo your comments about the outdoor centre at St Ives, very much needed. I just wanted to ask a question around the health hubs and just a little bit more about what that could look like, where that idea's come from, and how we're going to take that on board.
Yeah, thank you. We've seen in a number of leisure facilities where they've actually got integrated facilities. So, you know, starting with GP surgery, pharmacy, health and wellbeing activities. And I think those are the sort of opportunities, you know, counselling services, you're putting everything in one place. So you've actually got a centre of community, which in these facilities, which they are, an integral part of the sense of place. And I think that's the kind of lean towards that. And I think that developing those relationships with the health sector and the ICB would be really key to sort of bringing those on. Whether you can do it in the facilities as they are, whether they need sort of capital investment, whether they need change, whether you need different facilities to be explored. But I think putting the health sector closer to the leisure is where the future lies at the moment, which makes perfect sense, you know, and also about transport as well, where people can actually access these facilities.
If I may, Chair, just go back to Councillor Hunt's question about transformation and the transformation in-house. This has already started with Greg being the interim head of leisure when he joined us in May 2022. The next report you will see is part of that as well. I don't know if, Greg, if you want to sort of mention anything else, you know, with your remit and what we've done, or what you and your team have done so far.
So thanks, Councillor Taylor. So just to confirm on that, we will be presenting an annual review, performance review for One Leisure in early April. So that will cover the benefits of obviously One Leisure as a service and our journey towards a commercially sustainable position. But I think just to touch upon some of the points that Peter's made around the actual commercial approach to becoming sustainable. Obviously, we also support the corporate plan as well in terms of offering value for money services. And again, it's not a race to the bottom line. It's a journey to ensure that it's a balanced break-even service, so it is no burden to the council. But also, as an example, we've been working with the local PCN around how we can offer health and wellbeing services across some of our leisure centres. So, as an example, we've repurposed the spa treatment rooms at St Ives Indoor Leisure Centre and have actually occupied those with the local PCN. So they're offering different appointments through social prescribing and other health and wellbeing fast-track appointments for doctors. But in addition, we're also working with them about how we can extend their dermatology services as well around the local communities. So it's not just a leisure centre we're offering, it's also a journey on health and wellbeing and how we can repurpose the leisure centres to support the local communities as well.
Councillor Orban.
It's interesting. As has previously been said, this is a very thorough report and it took quite a while to go through, and I had to try and take a step back and just challenge my own instinctive feelings that we should keep things in-house and just try and question that, because that's my default position. I've equally got a pragmatic approach to thinking it doesn't have to just be the district council that delivers leisure facilities. But one of the things that I think the district council over the years can be proud of is we've adapted and we've changed, as been mentioned. I'm old enough to remember when there was the St Neots outdoor pool and there was the indoor pool at the Ivo, and that was pretty much it when I was growing up. And now what we've got now, and then things have changed. And I think that stands the test of time in terms of the provision for local community, unlike a gym. Not that I'm against making money at all, but a gym company that just sets up in an open unit and is here today and gone tomorrow. I think we have a role both in terms of health, fitness, but also in terms of health has been referred to. I've got a couple of specific questions to ask, but I'll ask those second if that's all right with you, Chair. But a broader point on the budget figures. I raised the point about how we were going to achieve the budget figures predicted at the full council, and Greg and Simon were kind enough to meet with me online during the week, and I wondered if Greg could expand and share with the rest of the members of the panel the figures that he shared with me about the time and effort that's gone into looking at projections and looking at where the income's going to come from, because I think that's worth sharing with all the members, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Yep, if I could just touch upon that, just bear with me. I've got some paperwork to support it as well. So I think at full council on the 21st of February, Councillor Orban quite rightly questioned some of the revenue figures for One Leisure. So I think the question was surrounding the revenue actually taken in 22-23. So that's actual revenue they've taken through the till or through direct debit income, which stood at 5.4 million. And the question was around how we actually achieved the movement from 5.4 million in 22-23 to 23-24, our budget of 6.1 million. We've just done our most recent forecast, and I can confirm that whilst it was a budgetary figure of 6.1 million across One Leisure, we are actually on course to hit our revenue targets for 23-24. So the increase in revenue of 700,000 is actually something we've achieved. It's not how we're going to get from 5.4 to 6.1. We've actually achieved that. The secondary question was around the jump in revenue from actual revenue taken in 23-24 to our new proposed budget of 24-25. I think if Councillor Orban agrees with that, that was around the crux of the discussion, which was a jump in about £800,000. So of the increase of about £800,000, £340,000 was directly attributed to the price increase that we put forward that was approved on the 21st of February by full council. In addition to that was about £50,000 of revenue, which is associated to a capital bid that we've put forward, which is around the refurbishment of St Neots and St Ives leisure centres to ensure we protect the revenue that we take there, also to support the membership base and to increase our members by circa 500 between now and the end of 2025. In addition to that, if you take that away from the 800,000, you've probably got a 6.6% increase of year-on-year income. That is very similar to the income that we've actually seen in terms of 5.4 million to 6.1 million. But the methodology that we've taken, we've actually taken it back to units. So we've looked at how we've increased our swimming, which is circa £65,000 year on year across 4 leisure centres. So we've simply gone back from how much revenue we've looked at. So we've looked at actual revenue from April 2023 to the time we set the budget of how much we've taken in and of all of our admissions, and concentrated on how many admissions that we've got and how many more admissions we would need to actually justify the increase in our revenue. So there's been massive work done by myself, my colleague Lealika, the business and operations manager, and the rest of our team. To give you another example, our revenue in the bowling alley at St Ives Indoor has increased by over £25,000. And what we've simply done is we've reviewed our core operating times of the bowling alley. We've extended those times, and we've jointly increased our revenue for hospitality, our catering revenue, and we've increased our revenue because we've opened up more time slots, because we've looked at pre-pandemic revenue and the admissions for ten-pin bowling, and we believe we're on that journey back to pre-COVID levels across the majority of our revenue lines as well. Is that okay, Councillor Orban?
Thank you, Chair. That was a speedy review of the figures we looked at in depth on Tuesday, and I think it was well worth hearing, because it's one of the things that would concern me that we didn't have a structured way of getting there, and Greg has reassured me that we do. Just on the specific points, before I do, I just thought I nearly forgot to mention, of course, Huntingdon had its own outdoor pool that I remember going to school swimming lessons freezing, and it was interesting that as things have evolved, I can remember hearing that, I think in my parents' generation, they used to go for outdoor swimming lessons from Buckden and walk down the road and swim in the river at Offord, and that was swimming lessons. So that's sort of a world apart in 2 generations, how we've moved forward. Just a couple of points. It's mentioned on here. Councillor Bywater can't be here tonight, but he did ask me to raise questions about Sawtry Leisure Centre, which is referred to in the document, and it affects his and Councillor Martin's ward, particularly in mine and Councillor Butel's ward. Where are we at with Sawtry Leisure Centre? There seems to be, we've tried our best to try and make things work. We've worked with people. We've worked with CMAT, but there doesn't seem to be any definitive answer as to where we are. And Councillor Bywater's concern is we're just in this nowhere area that nobody knows what's going. Even if it's bad news, that anything can't be done. That we need to know one way or the other, or the community needs to know one way or the other. And the other specific question was around the One Leisure call centre. I don't know whether staff multitask there and do other things, or whether they multitask and take calls from our main call centre. I'm just questioning in the right sense of the word, whether we should have call centres, or if they're not, should the call centre staff be multi-skilled in the main call centre, or are they already multi-skilled and doing other stuff at the leisure centres?
If that's okay. So the first one was around Sawtry swimming pool. So as you know, obviously, it was previously a council asset which was transferred over to the Meridian Trust in December 2019. And as we all know, COVID hit in March 2020. The pool reopened, but the decision was made in December 2022 to close the pool by the trust around the increases in utility costs and operating costs. And we've worked with them since the pool closure, and we've met them and actually visited the site to provide our operational support. We've also worked with them on Sport England, the Swimming Support Fund in phase 1, where we successfully worked with them and actually gained £38,000 of funding for them towards their utility costs. Unfortunately, obviously, the pool is still closed. We applied also and supported them in phase 2. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful in phase 2. Where are we now? Obviously, Councillor Bywater raised those issues on the 21st of February at full council. We've since met Councillor Bywater, Councillor Martin, obviously Councillor Taylor, and we discussed the issue at length. And an action out of that meeting was for me to contact the Academy to arrange a wider meeting with the Academy themselves, with the council, with the local community, and to see how we can move forward proactively as a group, to see how we can engage the community, how we can identify future opportunities for funding, how we can as a council can support them. But more so, it's around understanding what their operating plans are, around how they've decommissioned their plant, how they've made their staff redundant. And actually, because it's their asset, we need them to come forward through that meeting to understand how we can support them, not only as a council, but more widely through the local community as well, to ensure that when it does reopen, if it reopens, that the local community are accessing an important community facility, because the success of that facility will be through community use, not through any direct funding that we or others can give it. To get it open, we need direct community support and provision for it, and actually people to use it when it does reopen. And I think the second one was around the call centre, wasn't it? So the call centre at the moment facilitates a number of tasks. It was set up and opened with its main purpose to answer incoming calls for One leisure centres and active lifestyles. I think over time it's quite safe to say that they've taken on a number of different roles within that remit, both answering telephone calls, general administrational duties, bookings, hires, birthday parties and so on and so forth. And what we've recently done and what we're in the process of doing is redefining the purpose of the call centre to ensure that we can offer an excellent customer service as we take calls in, but we can also redefine and review the work that they do and how we can do things better. There's not much more I can add into that at the moment, because there's an ongoing consultation in terms of One Leisure as we speak. So confidentially wise, I can't really go into much more detail on that, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I think just to come back on your point as well, Councillor Alban, and to add to what Greg said, some of the numbers in here are large, and I think what I would just reassure you is, having sat down with Greg and Lee and understood some of those growth projections that are going forward, they absolutely build on that solid growth that's already been delivered over the past year, looking back at historic demand and how that's growing. But when I've sought reassurance, what you see is a plethora of management information that breaks down to pitch utilization rates, to usage stats at every outlet at different times of day, to individual targets. But culturally, what sits behind that, I think, is a real understanding in the team of how physical activity really supports one of the key priorities in the corporate plan, improving quality of life for local residents. So there is an aspect here, as budgets become tight, that the service has got to be self-sustaining. But I think there's a real recognition of those services, of what individual members of staff in centres are doing day in, day out to drive some of these things. So when you say, and how is our income on outside courts going to go up by £38,000, Greg and Lee?
They say, well, let me show you the utilisation rates on our Astro pitches here. We've been doing engagement with sports clubs. There's unmet demand here. We've got marketing plans. We're going to bring it all forward. So these are still projections at this stage. There's no guarantees. It's a commercial business. Things might change. But the level of detail and how that cascades through the business is of an order I have not seen before in my time here. So, Greg's gone through all of that in detail, but I just thought some of that stuff might be illustrative for you. And if you are in one of our one of the leisure centres and you'd like to see, have a chat with the manager. If you step into the manager's office in St Neots, which is just behind reception, you see a breakdown on usage of each of the sites, number of sign-ups, number of registrations, number of subscriptions at every single level, which will be illustrative of the kind of cultural change that Lee and Greg have driven through the business.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say on the Saltry swimming pool that Meridian did say it was a temporary measure, and I think in some respect I'm a little bit disappointed that they haven't reached out to their community, and Simon and Martin Ross having to come to HDC for that help, that reassurance, but absolutely we'll do our best to work with them and, as Greg said, to get the community involved and any other aspect that could help.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you. I got onto section 3.4 or thereabouts, and I'll be honest with you, I got slightly lost with all the different memberships and stuff that are coming up. So it mentioned a junior membership idea. Is that's a new thing that's come about? Is that something we've done before?
Yeah, we'll raise it in the next agenda item. Anyone got any other questions or comments on this agenda item? In that case, I don't know if Peter, that you're going to stay for the next agenda item, or are you leaving now? Thank you. Thank you. I was just going to comment, your report was excellent. It was so thorough. It was a really good and interesting read. So moving on to agenda item number 6, One Leisure Membership Architecture Proposal. Greg, are you presenting? Or...
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased to present this proposal on One Leisure Membership Architect to rebrand, realign, modernise the membership and pricing across all the One Leisure sites. The new memberships will provide added value alongside the reopening of the Pure Spas, as we heard earlier, St Ives Indoor and St Neots Leisure Centres. The different packages within the 3 new memberships will give choice to the customers, which includes families, individuals, and the new junior 11 to 15-year-old membership. The ranges are varied and hope that would be encouraging for residents to participate in activities to improve their physical, mental health and to socialise within their communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just before I start, I'd like just to introduce Lee Alliker, the Business and Operations Manager for One Leisure. He recently started, probably 10 months ago, so he's taken over from Paul France, who was with us for a number of years. So just to introduce you, and Lee will be supporting me in the presentation of the Membership Architecture Report this evening. So without further ado, I'd just like to start off going through the main purpose of the report and what we are presenting to you this evening. Councillor Taylor has kindly mentioned some of the key points of this, but around the purposes of the report and why we're bringing it forward, like Councillor Taylor said, it was to rebrand our existing membership, to realign our existing membership to our new online joining platform to improve customer experience. It's to ensure we've got consistent branding as well across all of our One Leisure activities. We want to redefine the existing memberships and introduce the new packages, which I'll come on to shortly. We want to align the pricing as well across all of our memberships to ensure that we've got a smooth online joining process that we've just implemented. And really what we want to do, a key focus of this is around ensuring that we can return One Leisure back to its pre-pandemic membership base. So I think last year in February I mentioned when I updated in our annual review that we, pre-pandemic in February 2020, we had 8,400 members. As it stands, that was around a 1,400 reduction because of COVID. And that 1,400 has actually reduced now to about 900 away from its pre-pandemic base. So we think that this is a really important and integral moment to actually essentially rebrand our existing membership architecture, bring it into the current form to compete with the local competition, but also improve the customer journey and experience on our new online joining platform, which enables us to compete with the Pure Gyms, Anytime Fitnesses and other private operators. But also it gives us an opportunity to really ensure we can, from a financially sustainable point of view, come back to our pre-pandemic membership levels. And actually at the same time, we're increasing opportunities for people to be physically active and access our leisure facilities through a range of value for money services and membership offers. Sorry, I'm changing it on my screen. I'm not changing it on the screen in front of you, but I do apologise. So to simplify the report, and as you'll have seen from the report, on the left-hand side here, within the existing branding, this is currently what we operate with within One Leisure Centres. Within the middle, what we simply want to do is streamline and modernise the different membership architecture. So as an example, we've currently got badminton, squash and table tennis. We want to ensure that we can brand it and call it One Rackets, which is not dissimilar to the wider leisure industry offer. In terms of our solo membership, as an example, that's a gym solo, that's just gym-only membership. We want to call it One Gym, which replaces the Impressions branding that we've had for a number of years, which essentially, it could sound like a hairdressing salon. It isn't really up to speed with what currently our competitors are offering. Our Platinum membership, which is our top yield, our top price membership on £40 at the moment before we introduce a price increase, will simply be called One Platinum. And on the next slide, I'll come on to the new memberships that we want to introduce. On the right-hand side, you've got the rationale for change, so a stronger branding presence. It's uniformity across our marketing offer. It's also transparency again for the customers that are visiting online. Again, we'll be looking at how we can create and improve a better interface within our website later on this year, so we can make sure it's compatible with mobile phones. We're streamlining the offer. We can then revert back to the clear management KPIs that Ollie mentioned a short time ago, so that we can set our teams up for success, so that we can manage performance, we can take targeted intervention if things aren't working correctly, and we can also support our management teams, and we can review the information we're getting, so we can actually look at the targeted offers, the membership offers that we introduce. And we also, as part of the new membership architecture, we're looking at elevating and implementing a higher yield membership, which if for any reason we don't return back to our pre-pandemic heads, because we're introducing a higher yield membership, it will increase the average price of a membership. So actually, whilst we might not hit our pre-pandemic heads levels, we will work towards a financially sustainable position. So I won't go through every single, sorry, I've got to change it on the screen again. I'll get used to this by the end of the presentation. I do apologise. So I won't go through every single proposal. So effectively, the report was centred around two things: a rebrand of our existing membership architecture, which I've just gone through, and also introducing 3 new memberships. Again, I won't go through each criteria because I know they're in your report. But effectively, we're asking for tonight, well, not tonight for approval, but we're asking for approval on 3 memberships. One is the junior membership on the right-hand side, which will be priced at £20. It will be offered to 11 to 14-year-olds. So from the competitor analysis that we've undertaken in Appendix 1 of your report, it was quite clear looking at that the local competition, there was really no offer for 11 to 15-year-olds across any of the competition we offered. So we thought that actually there's a niche here. We've got existing products and services that we can package together. Our next offer is a platinum junior membership, which is £30 a month, and this is essentially a bridge from people going to secondary school until they're 15, until they're sort of 15, sorry, and then the other membership kicks in when you're 15. So this is a new membership. The other membership that we're looking to implement as soon as April is a diamond membership, which is a tier above our current platinum membership, which is £40 a month. What this enables us to do, and Councillor Taylor alluded to this earlier, was that since January, when we opened the Pure Spas, this initiative has really forced us in a really fantastic way by reopening the Pure Spas at St Ives Indoor and at St Neots. What we've seen is an uplift in the sale of platinum memberships, because we've included Pure Spa access in the current platinum memberships. What we will do, if successful, is that at the end of that period, the platinum memberships from the 1st of April, once this is implemented, won't have the platinum access as part of the membership. So not only have we supported our sales process, we've also reopened a facility which has provided valuable assets for people to undertake health and well-being. We've increased our usage across sites, but also with the introduction of the Diamond membership, it enables them to access the Pure Spa. This is a pilot, so we want to pilot this as an opportunity. It also allows members to have an additional day's booking rights. So currently it's 7 days in advance. This would allow Pure Spa access and also an additional day to book group exercise classes. And so essentially it's approval for 3. But it's essentially a junior membership and diamond membership that we would look to implement, and the diamond would be on a trial, and upon that successful trial we would then look to implement the Diamond Plus membership, which is again another tier above that, which would give us an advancement on booking rights for group exercise, additional opportunities to access our facilities, because we've coupled in things such as free soft play, 2-hour peak time rackets, because we know that is a generous offer, but also guest passes for family members to bring their friends, because again that will encourage additional attendances across the board. So we know that, coming back to Councillor Orban's point, where our revenue has increased year on year, we know that actually we've got 100,000 more attendances in 23-24 than we had in 22-23. So because we've actually, in my eyes, got 100,000 more attendances, we've made more people physically active, and at the same time we've had more people through our doors spending more money, and that's why our revenue has increased. This is an opportunity that we haven't had for a number of years, where we haven't really reviewed our membership architecture. We need to compete with the local competition. We are a local authority in-house leisure provision. We need to remain commercial, but at the same time we needed a balanced approach to ensure we're offering value for money, wider access to our facilities. We've reopened facilities that were closed because of COVID, and we've given greater people a greater opportunity to access those. And why are we doing this? So again, I've touched upon a clearer marketing offer, making it easier to understand for our customers, improve the customer journey, making sure that we've got a clear membership option to drive commercial sales. It enables us to remain competitive as well, and it supports greater usage. We've seen a greater usage within the Pure Spas. So a positive point is that we've held the pay and play price in the Pure Spas at the pre-pandemic levels of £7.50, so that hasn't increased. But what we have seen is from the pay and play income in January alone, it took around £2,000 of revenue just in pay and play revenue. And that's something that also supports our commercial journey. It supports obviously a greater attendance base. And it really does support the financial sustainability of One Leisure. And it works towards that goal, but it also works towards our corporate plan by trying to make more people more physically active and improving their health and well-being and providing greater access and more efficient services. And then finally, the recommendations. I won't go through every single one because they're in the report. Sorry, thanks, Lee. So the key recommendations was a rebrand of the existing membership base and architecture, realign and modernise the membership architecture and pricing across One Leisure sites, and to ensure that we can implement 3 new memberships across the Junior, the Diamond, and the Diamond Plus to maximise access and support commercial sustainability. But also, just as a reminder, this is a key proposal which forms a significant part of the process to return One Leisure back to pre-pandemic levels, both in membership base, financial sustainability, and providing greater access to our facilities that we recently reopened as well. I'd like to take questions now, if that's okay. Oh.
Thank you. I won't ask the same question because you already answered it. Obviously, under the junior membership, on the same subject, it mentions off-peak court usage. What is off-peak?
Essentially, Traditionally, within the leisure industry, it's between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So again, I know that for the junior club, that obviously runs through the summer period and half-term periods as well. So it's not restricted just to term time as well. So that's something, again, the memberships we're putting forward, essentially, we haven't said it on the junior one, but we will monitor this closely, as Ollie's alluded to. We've got forensic detail on our usage information, our revenue information, our expenditure, our capacities within our group exercise classes, and also our wider hall usage. And what we're trying to do as well by doing this, particularly the junior membership, is to offer an opportunity where our main halls or sports halls aren't being used, that we can increase our occupancy, because if they're not being used by members of the public, then it's a good opportunity for young children that might not want to partake in a gym to come in and utilise the sports hall with their parents, which they can actually do as part of this membership. And looking at the competitive analysis, for £20 a month for what you actually get, I think it's excellent value for money.
I think it's brilliant. It's a great idea, and I'm really look forward to and interested to see what sort of uptake you get on that. Brilliant.
Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned as you were going through your introduction bit, a junior plus. Is that 15 to 18-year-olds just to bridge that gap? Is that something that you've kind of got in the back of your minds?
So actually, at the moment, it's actually a gap. It was a gap. So effectively, what we're proposing is for 11 to 15-year-olds. We've actually already got a platinum membership for juniors from 15 to 18. So this is to plug the gap from up to 11 years, which is traditionally swimming lessons and different activities around the leisure centres. What we didn't have is for 11 to sort of 15-year-olds. What we had got is 15 to 18. So when children are finishing school or college, they've got something to go straight into. This is to try and ensure, and also try and make sure children of that age can be physically active and can come in with their parents that also have a membership as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's looking great. I'm quite excited to see you come back with a report on how well it's been going. Thank you. Yeah. Did you want to come in on this point or before we move into private session? Councillor Taylor, just to make a comment before we move into private session.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so obviously we've got two items that are going to be in closed session. One of the items, which is item 9, is Hitchinbrook Country Park. And although we are in private session, the reason being is that we have confidential items, so commercially confidential. But what I want to assure the public is that if they want to speak to me, I'm more than welcome to speak to them, but without the commercially sensitive area, or they can also go onto our website where we will have updates on there about the investment plan at Hitchinbrook Country Park.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So moving on then to item 7, exclusion of the press and the public. To resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting because of the business to be transacted contains exempt information relating to the financial and business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. So if the press and the public could now leave.
I don't think we have any, but that's
I don't think we have.
I think we're just, yeah.
hope you like biodiversity, because this is the fourth time I'm bringing something to you this year with regard to supporting nature to thrive in Huntingdonshire. And that's because, like I've said all the other times, there are really four elements to this work in our council. The first is the local nature recovery strategy, which we had a session from the county council officers about the work they're doing there. Then there was our strategic sites, which came through in a paper to you at our last meeting. And then if you think back to January, alternative land management, where some of the ops team were here to talk about the long grass trials. So this is the fourth element of biodiversity work for our council, and that's about community grants and how we engage our communities with improving biodiversity. One thing I would point out right in the first page of your report is this project creates no financial burden for HTC. So this is a project that's entirely funded by the Combined Authority, and that's what's funded our extra staff in the short term to complete the project. But really, I think overall, this element of the biodiversity work is the best example of us enabling. So you'll often see in our corporate plan that we want to do things, enable things, and influencing things. And these community grants mean a lot to the community groups and the parish councils and the schools who are interested, especially because it's not just funding, it's advice, which can lead to the opportunity for funding, and they can decide whether they want to go ahead with that or how much of the advice they want to take. So often there are grants available for community groups where they already need to know exactly what they want to do, exactly how much it's going to cost, and who's going to do the work. And that becomes a big barrier for smaller groups to apply for funds like this. So I'm really excited and happy about the project so far, but I'll let Nick tell you a little bit more.
Thank you. The background to this project is that the council were fortunate enough to secure £1.35 million from the CPCA back in February 2022. There were delays initially with getting the grants signed off, so there were some initial delays, but extra work has been put in to make sure that the project was caught up to speed and everything is on time and is within budget. To help people understand the structure of the project, we've broken it down into 5 areas. So first is the Combined Authority grant, the funds, how they've helped us create a project team, what that project team looks like. Second theme is the jobs and skills aspect. The third is our strategic open spaces. Fourth is the community-driven delivery, and then finally, fifth is the mapping aspect. These can be seen quite clearly on page 6, as we've tried to break them down into a table format and using the appendix to go into more detail on each area. So with the CPCA grant, we've been able to completely fill out our project team. So we have a part-time project manager, a part-time project support officer, and 2 graduate ecologists so everyone's in post and the graduate ecologists are gearing up and ready to go now that it is audit season, so they can get out there, see what's happening in spring and make sure that those audits are ready to help support the community grant process. Second is the jobs and skills aspect, and today it's a pretty pertinent day, as was the completion ceremony for the 4th project, which is run by Groundworks East Limited, and they have wrapped up their project at Paxton Pits, which I understand has been a real success, and Councillor Davenport-Ray was there today to see the certificates be handed out. So unfortunately, at the time of writing, this report doesn't factor in that completion there. But when I was writing this, 14 of the volunteers over the 3 previous projects had completed and gained a level 1 qualification in horticulture from the City and Guilds Trust. So it's giving those people the skills and opportunity to both get practical hands-on work delivering on our sites and gaining qualifications to help them enter the green economy. On our strategic open spaces, we it hasn't actually been long since we presented the options paper to you a couple of months ago, in January, I believe it was, where we set out the decision-making process for which sites we would put in which delivery tranche and how we came up with those decisions and the process. Since then, we have commissioned a delivery partner called Glendale's, who are now entering the stage where they will be going out to engage with those 3 sites in tranche 1 to come up with a co-design approach that has that evidence base behind it. Then moving on to our community-driven delivery. This is a 2-part project. So first of all, we did the pilot round where we helped test the process, as we want everything we do to be evidence-based. So therefore, we identified key strategic partners, initiated the ecological audits on their identified sites, and then now we are helping support them come up with grant applications for sign-off, and I believe we are now at 7 out of the 10 sites that have been successful with the grants now, and that's a maximum grant of £8,000 to help deliver the work that has been set out in the audits. The second part of this is the wider community grant, so the second round. And the first stage of this has been an expression of interest where landowners that allow for public access come to us with an expression of interest with their site. And we had the difficult task recently of trimming down 35 expressions of interest down to 10 sites where we will conduct and deliver those ecological audits, which will then be an asset for that organisation or land manager, as Councillor Davenport-Ray mentioned, for them to do work with in the future or to use in our own grant round, which will be coming up at the end of the summer. So our ecologists, who will be key to this, they will be going out pretty much as of now to conduct those audits and help those community groups, land managers, come up with the best possible approach to help increase biodiversity on their sites so that everyone in that community can access it. And then moving on to mapping, we are using the iNaturalist platform, which we have had signed off by the council and conducted the DPIA, which has been passed. And we are successfully using this on a variety of different BioBlitz exercises where we can involve the community, local groups, schools to help them get involved. An iNaturalist is an app that uses AI to help identify different species, plant types, different flora and fauna, and helps educate people. But it also has that mapping aspect. So wherever you have taken that picture, wherever you have uploaded, that is mapped onto a system which we can see and the public can see as well. And we are setting up boundaries for our own strategic sites so we understand exactly what's being recorded there. And the AI is the first step, but also it's engaging a wider community of ecologists to verify what's there as well, creating interest in there. If I scroll down to 5.2, this gives you an initial outline of the funding from the CPCA and how it was divided up into the different themes and areas of work. This obviously with the delays and with different project changes, there will be some adjustments. So one of the recommendations is that we will come back in the future to update you near to the end of the project to let you know how it's gone, and we will be able to give you a clearer picture of which areas have received what funding, but this was the initial plan. And I think that's probably a good time for me to answer any questions.
Not any questions? Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the list of strategic sites, I've noticed that Huntingdon Riverside isn't on there. Why is that?
No, thank you for raising that. And the reason is because that we received that audit late. That's the main reason why. So in future work, it will be wrote into our plans. But unfortunately, it was just time slippage why it wasn't put in this one, but it is in our plans, and we do have plans to conduct a green skills project there, so it will receive the attention it deserves.
Any other? Oh, Councillor Orban.
It was interesting reading the report in reference to a priestway in Stilton. I had a chat with the parish clerk, and it was interesting seeing that we've negotiated and liaised with our parish councils, and hearing how the parish council liaised with the residents as to what they wanted and what was appropriate. And even though the parish council had got some ideas, the residents said, no, we would prefer this. And I think the whole process has come up with something that hopefully everyone will be happy with. So congrats on that. Just one question relating to the posts. Can you remind me, are they full-time posts or are they short-term contracts?
They're all fixed-term contracts till the end of the project, and my personal hours as the project manager have increased. So I've gone from doing 2 days a week to now 4 days a week. So there's extra capacity there, and the project support officer is 20 hours a week, but the ecologist roles are full-time.
Just wanted to add on that really that we've built through this project a relationship with Anglia Ruskin University, and that's where the graduates effectively are coming from. And we've built a relationship with the faculty, and we're currently working on internships during the summer for the students, where we'll be funding kind of, their travel and their, lunch, etc. And we've identified using our graduates how they can fit in and do some of that work. We're also currently working on a placement program for ARU students to look at the opportunities for students to come and work for us for a year. Initially, we're just going to start with one because we want to, pilot it, proof of concept. But the university are really, really keen on that. And I think the other aspect here is to reflect on the fact that this whole project is designed to build a model that's replicable. I was gratefully informed by Councillor Davenport-Ray that actually the plans for the combined authority are actually to look at opportunities to roll that out in the next year. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to play an active role in that, given our experiences and also the stories from our communities, as Councillor Alban has intimated. So, and the funding doesn't always have to come from us. And if we can do the biodiversity study and help support the communities to do that community design, then there's no reason why our communities can't apply to alternative funding such as the A428 Social Value Fund at the moment, which will support small projects for biodiversity where communities want to take action. And I think, it's that conversation and getting it started. We're also looking at options to retain ecology within our open spaces structure. And so we're looking at options at that at the moment. So it's a very different changed sphere, but I would say it's, biodiversity is in the top 3 issues for our residents in terms of the climate strategy and their priorities. And so this project and the outcomes that we're delivering fits exactly within the delivery of that climate strategy and also our corporate plan.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I think you might have touched on it in your presentation, but how many expressions of interest did you get in the first round of the community grants in January?
We received 35, which we were over the moon with. There were some really, really exciting opportunities there. We're actually quite sad that we couldn't take more forward, but we worked quite hard to make sure we understood what the capacity was and what we could do and do a good job with our ecologists. So we came to the decision that we would only take 10 sites forward. The sites that weren't successful have been notified, but they will be at the front of our minds for any future opportunities.
And those that aren't successful, you mentioned, did you say, sorry, a 428 Community Action Fund, did you just mention? Would we say signpost them to them to see if they can perhaps get funding from elsewhere?
I think one of the challenges is the ecologist resources to actually define the art of the possible. So what we found, and Nick will correct me if I'm wrong, but through the engagement, communities have really appreciated talking to a trained, qualified ecologist who can give them options, because everyone's got a view of what might be possible, but they don't necessarily know what might be best. And so in conversation with an ecologist, they get to have that conversation about what might be best as well as what might serve the community right. Again, I think Councillor Alban described that kind of process. So where the first stage of the expressions of interest is actually partnering them up with an ecologist to do that work, to then take it to the next step. I think what we're keen to do and try to do is create avenues with those placements, internships, to get capacity back into the system, to do a bit of that work so that then we can get them in a position to apply for the A428. The A428 fund, the Social Value Fund, which is an opportunity for this, exists for a number of years, and there's a number of tranches. So if we can get that skill set into those communities, it will be an opportunity. But at the moment, they would have a gap in that ecology, defining and scoping perhaps what they wanted to do. And as Nick said, it is hard, but we're trying new stuff. We've done a pilot with some authorities. Now we've extended that out. And we're talking with the combined authority to try and look for opportunities to continue that process as much as we can. So as Nick eloquently said, we don't want to leave people behind. We want to bring them with us. But what we do, we've got to do right.
I would just finish by offering a challenge up to my colleagues. Last time we talked a bit about the iNaturalist app, and Nick mentioned it as well. I've been encouraging all my residents, all my guide groups, all my scout groups to be using this app and to logging where nature is in our ward. And the ecologist teams can very easily access geographically all of our wards and know how many identifications have been made. So my challenge would be to see if your ward can identify more species in Huntingdonshire than our ward. And perhaps through that type of challenge, we might even better help identify and map the nature that lives across Huntingdonshire, because I think it's very rich, and I'd love to get a good data set of what it is.
Councillor Hunt.
That's a really good segue into what I was going to ask, because I will confess, I haven't had a chance to use iNaturalist yet because I have been hunched over my work laptop in a darkened room for the past 2 months, unfortunately. But it's an absolutely cracking project from what I've seen. I know people who have been involved with it. It's absolutely brilliant. I've been scrolling through, and I think it was mentioned as well about a BioBlitz and how there's a couple of those planned. Could you give a bit of information about what the plan is to happen during that, the kind of communication, kind of how we're going to reach out to people during that?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't have the dates in front of me now, but we do have an Easter BioBlitz planned. I think it might be Paxton Pits, yeah. So there will be one over Easter, and we will be advertising that through the different social media channels that the council can access.
Before we move on, is there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray, Neil and Nick, for a brilliant presentation. Thank you for the work that you're doing. So finally, item number 12, Household Garden Waste Subscription Service Update. We've got Councillor Taylor again and Andy to give us the update.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say, and then there was 2. We are getting there. Okay. So the report before you provides an update on the work and level of subscription uptake across the district. There has been a strong sign-up, which I think shows how valid the service is. The early bird discount has been a pinnacle point and has allowed the scheduling and the routing to take effect early, ready for rollout, alongside minimising the risks of changes to our residents. It has also given a reduced rate over 3 years if paid for by direct debit. Also, the report shows an update on the implementation of the community initiatives developed with our community representatives. Like, we had quite a lot of online virtual meetings with our parishes. Within these initiatives, I think there's around 6, one of them including Saturday freighters. Unfortunately, we can't get the freighters into every part of the district. It's just impossible to do. So what one of the initiatives to mitigate that is for the parishes that aren't included with the freighter service, they have the opportunity to have up to 10 community bins free of charge. I will touch on the communication plan because I think that's really important, because I don't believe that everyone in our district still knows about this change in service. So there will be a robust community plan, and I think it's been approved, detailing all our key messages for residents about the change to our service on the green bins. One form of the communication will be the bin hanger. I think we all recognise the bin hanger. It's going to be located on the grey bin, the refuge bin. Historically, this has been a successful way to let residents know about our changes to our waste collections with bank holidays, Christmases. It's really something that our residents look out for. So, yeah, back to you, Chair.
Oh, there we go. I'm working. I appreciate it's not really the purpose of the report, but I think it's fair to say that most of the inquiries I've had from residents is relating to food waste being excluded from the green bins. And just from a personal perspective, I'm sure other councillors in the room would probably agree. I think it'd be perhaps nice to have some communication regarding what actually happens with food waste that goes into the grey bins and how it's processed. Because us residents just instantly think landfill, and that's not necessarily the case, but I think it'd just be nice to highlight that. Perhaps whether that's once a service is introduced or prior to that, I don't know. But, just a thought.
On the bin hangers that I've just spoken about, we're having on one side letting the residents know about the change service, and then on the flip side it will be to encourage residents of how to get rid of their food waste. It will give them initiatives of how to give their food waste, not necessarily always in the grey bin. I'm sure Andy can add more to that.
To be fair, it's a theme that comes up on a regular basis. Residents are genuinely interested in what happens to the materials, because people do put a lot of time and effort in making sure recyclable materials being cleaned in the right bins, and it's an area that we have been historically quite weak with. Moving through to our waste minimisation plans and our future strategies, that will be a key area, part of our messaging about not just putting the right thing in the right bin, but actually what happens to the material. The fascinating processes, MBT processes, are fascinating processes, and people are genuinely interested. There's a lot of effort and really, really clever key technology that goes into making sure that some of the environmental impacts of these materials are minimised.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. Can I only echo what Councillor Shaw said about the food waste? That's one of the key things that's come up. It's interesting, the old faithful thing as well about fly tipping has come up, and I've repeated what you've told me, Andy, to residents when I've been asked that the evidence doesn't support that will happen. What I struggle with more to get to grips with is how my concern is that green waste will end up in the grey bins. And what are we doing to monitor what the levels of green waste collection was and whether it's going in grey bins and what kind of effect that has on our service and our cost projections? And the second question I have is how many refuse collectors or how many losses of staff posts are we looking at once this comes into operation?
So just to answer your first question, so if you cast your mind back to the early conversations and debates around charging for garden waste service, we put a lot of data forward. So as a recap partnership, we spend a lot of time and money getting specialist companies in to do waste analysis and composition analysis, because that's really key on how we shape and form our future services moving forward. One of the big key things that comes out across the whole of the recap partnership is in the grey bin, 41% of it is biological material that shouldn't really be there. So there's 35% food waste, around about 5 or 6% garden waste goes in. When we look at two of our neighbours, we took data from Peterborough and Fenland. They have one charges for garden waste already, both in charge for garden waste, and one has separate weekly food waste collections. When you look at the composition of their grey bins, it's only about 5 percentage points higher than HDC's, who, under the old system, had a free-to-use garden and food waste bin. So the perception that all the food waste was going in the right bin doesn't match the data, and it really hasn't for a long time. So when I talk about waste minimisation messaging, that's, again, something that's highlighted for us, that we need to spend a lot more time in that space, actually, about minimisation.
I think the data, if I'm correct, Andy, the data does show that around 70% was deemed avoidable. So the food waste going in to our grey bins, our refuge bins, 70% could have been eaten, which incidentally, in money terms, can save the household around £500 a year.
Could you just repeat the second part of your question, Councillor Alban, please?
The second question is how many posts, full-time and part-time, are we going to lose when this is in operation?
So just to give you some context, operational services, we've got, just in waste and recycling alone, we've got 74 staff that go day to day. During that, we haven't got technically any spare staff. So every one of those staff members has round about 41 days. That's holiday, bit of sick, bank holidays, a few things. It's about around about 41 days, about 3,000 days of employment that we need to cover, which we do with the agency. We're not planning any redundancy. We're just looking at how we reduce the agency and then redeploy them further into the service. So we're not looking at getting rid of any particular staff.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Shaw?
Slightly off topic, but I just wanted to highlight what a great work I think the waste minimisation team do. A lot of the posts I see on social media and stuff are very topical and funny, and they engage people. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say what a good job I thought they did.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that comment, because I can vouch for that. The waste minimisation team are fantastic. I recently, with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pitt and Mickleborough, I think it was, we joined a session with them here in this room doing wormeries. And it was great fun. And I've got mine hanging up in the front garden on a little apple tree that I'm growing, and I'm waiting for the worms to do their job and bring the food down and mulch it up and do what they do. it was quite amazing, really, because myself and Councillor Ferguson do not like worms, but we still did it. So I would encourage members and residents to look at wormeries.
And just on the waste minimisation team, when we talk about waste minimisation team, instantly people think, oh, I had this in the past, we have a whole floor at Pathfinder or Eastfield House of people on the phone and engaging with communities. It's 3 members of staff. So when we talk about wanting to work more in waste minimisation space, because that's exactly what the waste hierarchy dictates that we should be doing. We should be preventing waste from entering the waste stream to start with. I may be coming in the next couple of months just saying how we can try and bolster and try and improve that service.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Lowe.
You mentioned about the wormeries. Have you got any intentions to do any public sessions for that? About the wormeries?
The session that we had did involve community. So we do have waste buster meetings as well, either in here or in the small. Well, it started in the smaller rooms, but because it got popular, we are now in this room, and it's open to all. Absolutely. If anyone wants to come along, the waste busting meetings are for anyone to attend.
I shall do that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Oliver, thank you.
Just one more for me. You might recall last time round we had a presentation from one of Andy's team, Matt Chudley, about biodiversity, which Councillor Davenport Ray mentioned. If any of you are going around the ring road on the way home, just observe the new holly hedge that has gone in to replace the previous kind of hard landscaping of wooden fencing, which is a practical example that came out of conversations here last time out and is already in situ. So it's just a really good example of conversations happen here and Andy and the team take them away and make them happen within a matter of weeks. So just a nice thing if you're heading in that direction.
If there's no other questions or comments, that's a really lovely note to leave on. Thank you for your time and your questions.